When we initially met on Tremors, it had been pretty much storyboarded. They had worked out a lot of what they wanted the shots to look like. They hadn't necessarily worked out how they could be done.
Between my dad, my brother, and I, we would brainstorm just trying to figure out how to make it all happen in a realistic way.
I love the scene in the basement. I mean, that basement set, every little tile we made in miniature. Every little tool hanging on the wall was all miniature, and that looked completely real. And of course, they're shooting this worm with all the guns they have.
There are several muzzle blasts in that shot. The gun had muzzle blasts, but I think they wanted to punch it up again, so it would be like a real muzzle blast, an animated muzzle blast, a real muzzle. It was alternating, so some of them are real. Sometimes you can't tell them apart.
Tremors was old school, everything old school. You got a tiny love story, you got two great characters that played really well together, and done on a budget, out in the desert, very small. You get, oh my God, I loved that movie. Anytime I mention it.
We are primarily known for in-camera visual effects, miniatures, but as well as matte paintings. We do miniature pyro. We pretty much do the whole shebang and have over the years. My brother Dennis and I grew up in an area where, in a sense, there wasn't a lot happening. You know, we found ourselves bored a lot, and toys didn't quite do it for us. But movies were really exciting, so one of the things that we started doing was mimicking, making little sets, little models, those sorts of things. Doing the best we can to try to, said, well, we can't go to the moon, we can't go to these planets, but we're doing our own little landscapes and that sort of thing. So it's from a very, very young age. We were both had a, sort of an artistic leaning. Being interested in art and being creative and being in a boring place just kind of leads to making movies, you know. That's kind of what happened with us. We had no choice, in a way.
Robert and Dennis Skotak, good friends of families. Really much respect for both of them. They were huge fans of my grandfather's. They would come around just to meet Gene Warren Sr. One thing I always like to say is, you know, some families are plumbers, some families are electricians. We happen to be a visual effects family. And then they met my father and kind of became friends. They were kind of competition, but we never looked at them as competition because they were like-minded, we were friends, there was so much work going on in the business.
We had known Gene and Fantasy 2 for years. We were good friends. So if we had something we weren't available for, we'd say, yeah, just talk to Gene. You know, he's game for anything.
My dad, Gene Warren Jr., was best known for his high-speed miniature photography. Fantasy 2 was actually one of the major visual effects houses that were what we called A to Z effects. So we did miniatures, makeup effects, optical effects, even digital effects for a while, practical effects, props. I mean, it was the full gamut. You know, there was only a few companies, you know, ILM, Boss, Forward Productions. There were not very many people. In fact, when I started in 1980, there were probably only, you know, 200 or 300 people in all of the United States who considered themselves visual effects filmmakers.
Through the 1980s, my brother and I had been working for hire. We worked for Roger Corman. Then we went on to work on Aliens and The Abyss.
Galen Hurd is one of the best well-known producers ever. But when we were working with her, we were all together working at the old Hammond Lumber Yard for Roger Corman, working on Battle Beyond the Stars. That's how we met her.
Forward Productions was a company that we started in 1989. Started it with my then wife, Elaine Redford.
That's when Gail Hurd called me up and said, we have this project called Tremors, and we'd love you guys to work on the effects, but we can't have you as a subcontractor or a freelancer. You have to incorporate and become a company because Universal Studios won't finance it that way. So Robert and I got on the phone, called an attorney in Pasadena, and we got in the car and drove to Pasadena and incorporated the company, and Gail delivered the first check on the following Friday, came messenger to our condo, and that's how the company got started.
So we just incorporated and went to work. And it was one of those things, it all came together very smoothly. And it turned out they were right around the corner. The production office, just, you could walk there. So we went in and of course met Ron Underwood and the people involved. They were all just great people.
Well, the budget, I believe it was somewhere around $200,000.
Liked the story, it was a great script.
You ever heard of anything like this before?
Oh, sure, Earl. Everybody knows about them. We just didn't tell you.
And that in particular is what really sold it, is it was such a good script, just hitting every right note between humor, scares, adventure, all those things. We had an idea for the sequence in the basement. Half of that room was built in miniature. I mean, it was built full size, but it was also built in miniature. And you would cut from Michael Gross and Reba firing, and then you would cut to the miniature, and then you would cut to the full size graboid. And I said, well, you know, there's another way we could connect the shot rather than in cuts. So I suggested an idea. I said, why don't we start on Michael Gross with the gun, and we pan off of him onto the miniature. We'll do a cut in the middle of the pan. Well, they were a little afraid to do that with the actor. But I suggested, why don't we have him drop one gun to go get another gun? Later on, we could get the same boots, the same shoes, and the gun, and the same piece of floor. We shoot it at our shop, drop the gun, pan off of it, and then pan onto the miniature, which was only a few feet away. That was a way to make it look like they were right there in the room, without an optical. So we were trying to come up with ideas that might avoid opticals because that's more expensive. And we weren't quite set up to do opticals yet. Actually, it was at that point where we started talking about opticals that I suggested Gene Warren do some of the shots.
Did a lot of elements on Tremors. Knowing Gail Ann Hurd from the first Terminator and many movies with her after, she came to us, I wouldn't say to do any fix-up work, because most of the work that was done in Tremors by the Skos holds up today, but to try and spice up a few things. For instance, when he comes through the wall, and the husband and wife are just blowing away at him, shooting him up, we just add some more bullet holes. Without the bullet hits, it just looks like he's jerking around and he's trying to bite you. Just adding these little bullet hits to him, showing the audience that he was being hit and nothing's happening to him.
We built a quarter scale miniature, a half of the set. That happened to be the side of the set that had all the countertops, bookshelves, pegboard with tools on it. But I will have to say that my brother Dennis did a lot of the miniature work on that. He's very good with model work, although he concentrates on the photography. On a lot of these films, before we started shooting, before he got behind the camera as a photographer, he was part of the model shop. I think we came up with something like 122 pieces that had to be all built, custom built in quarter scale. So anytime on live action, somebody, a set dresser would come in, set decorator, they'd put stuff on there. I go, no, it's another thing that we have to make.
The first thing that we did was just add some dust elements. I mean, there's a shot where they're running. They wanted us to put some smoke elements. That was an addition that Brett Mixon went into rotoscope.
So tell us, what is rotoscoping?
Well, let's see. Essentially, it's glorified tracing.
Camera looking down, you project it, you put it down on the ground, and you had to ink. It literally had to ink around each individual frame.
You would take a clip and you get the perspective of the shot, and then they would black out the stage and they would have a little device to create the puffs of dust, and then you'd go in on the optical printer and fine-tune the alignment.
And one of the reasons why Gail did come to us to do these types of shots is we had our own optical printer. So not only were we shooting the elements, we were also adding the elements to the negative. So it was like a one-stop shop for us. It wasn't we shot the elements, then they went to somewhere else, and then somebody else would go, well, these elements don't fit, or these elements aren't perfect, or these elements aren't that, you know. We did our own elements, which got us a lot of work at the time. If we didn't like it, we'd go and reshoot it.
For a while, I was the roto department, so I would do the rotoscoping, then you would animate. I was the cameraman. You got to do a lot of different things and learn a lot of different things.
Brett Mixon was, he's one of two. There's twins. Bart Mixon is a prosthetics guy, and he did all of our prosthetics on it. His twin brother, Brett, was our rotoscoper.
I guess I'm one of that generation that they call monster kids. We were just at that right age when the whole monster boom hit in the late 50s, early 60s. And then, of course, we started making our own Super 8 movies. I tried to create something that would spotlight my brother's makeup effects work. And then it got to the point where I felt I could either study about films in school, or I could actually just come out to California and try to work, find a job in the business. The one shot where the car is pulled underground, and then right at the end of the sequence, they cut to a shot of the hillside, and you see the headlights. So they shot on stage an element of lights with smoke to simulate the dust, and then I had to do just like a single frame matte to follow the landscape to put the lights behind the hill. So something like that, it was easy, or then it could get very complicated.
Just keep looking at that beautiful sky.
Prior to the car disappearing, the couple are out in the desert and they look up at the night sky, and so there's like a star field, and that looks like one of our star fields, because we would take it like a piece of tinfoil and you poke little holes in it and then shoot it. You bottom light it on the animation stand, and then you could put little different colored gels to make some of the stars bluer or warmer. There's a couple of shots where point of view shots of the worm, so it transitions from the ground to an underground shot, and there's an animated kind of reveal.
And it was a really cool setup how my dad designed it. Had to put a plexiglass ball around the lens of the camera. We stuck it into a trash can, had some little not LEDs, there weren't LEDs at the time, but little Kino flows, little teeny mini flows that lit the dirt. We put the camera in it, filled it up with dirt, so it was actually lighting itself, would roll, and then pulled the camera out. And then as we were pulling it out, we would shove dirt in to make sure that it was filling the gap as it pulled out, and then you shoot it in reverse, and it looks like you're digging into the dirt.
There are quite a few shots in Tremors that were not what you would think of as any kind of visual effects shot. They look just like another live action shot. They're in a sense kind of innocuous, but they're pieces of film that you need to tell the story. So one of the shots was one of these explosives that were kind of like a pipe bomb that's being pulled along the ground. That was done as a quarter scale miniature. The trick there is that there is a fuse that's lit, that's burning. So there is a solution that creates smoke that's an A and B solution. So what we did was we painted the A solution on this little wire, set that thing down on the ground and started to pull it. We had a fan on this side that we misted in the B solution, because it was a very short time that smoke would appear there, so it would last just long enough. So the B solution was in the air coming across the A solution and created this little smoke path for it to follow. That's one of those shots that would turn out to be incredibly difficult because it skewed to the side or the worm didn't come up or whatever. Again, it's just a storytelling shot, but it required tricks. Well, the cliff was all miniature. We had built this very large, it was a 2-story cliffside, and we leaned it up against the building. I'd have to say that there weren't very many easy shots in Tremors. Tremors, for me, was the real dream crew. Really the best way you can work in film, where everybody's contributing. As it turned out, the film went so smoothly for us, and for the production, they came in a little under budget. The studio said, let's put a little more money in it, so we got a second contract. We were pretty much finishing up with the first group of shots, and they said we should have another shot of the graboid breaking out of the ground. We need a shot where it's traveling through, this is in the back or side yard. Just stuff that really helped the live action flow of the graboids, because the graboids couldn't move physically a lot. They couldn't travel like the car would travel. You know, they needed those shots to be done in miniature. So we added quite a few of those shots in that second contract. And at that point, it was icing on the cake, because everything we added just made it that much better.
It has to sell the story and the characters. Effects for effects' own purpose really don't work. You have to make it so that you believe that guy is sitting in that spaceship. You believe that that graboid really exists. It's very important to the drama of the story or the humor.
Certain visual effects are meant to be understood, not as visual effects per se, but that they are visual effects. A giant monster trampling a city with buildings crumbling is obviously a visual effect, so you don't want it to be invisible. You want it to just look like a realistic scene in the movie, but you know it's visual effects. Other types of shots, like some of the stuff that was in Tremors, is meant to be seamlessly invisible. You don't think it's a miniature, it's just another shot in the movie that turned out to be easier to do and practical in a miniature setting. The fact that they were invisible, that's very rewarding.
In the old days of optical compositing, we wouldn't have, occasionally we'd use our library of certain things that would be generically used, but almost always we would set up a shot, do a motion control tracking move, get a move, and then recreate these things for real for that shot specifically and only for that shot. The digital tools have made it much easier to do these things. It's not the end all, it's just another tool in the visual effects toolbox. You know, it's a very important tool, but it's not necessarily the only thing that's gonna create these images on screen, and sometimes it's gonna be better just to do it practically.
Tremors was one of those movies that I remember the first time Gail came to the office and said, I have some little thing I want to show you, and I was only 25 years old at the time, and I watched it. And I walked outside. I'd only been in the business full time, mind you. Sold my soul. I'd only been in the business for 3 or 4 years. I walked out going, wow, that's a bad movie. Wow, why are we even working on this movie? Why are they even putting money into this movie? And it was a really, really rough cut. But I was young. I didn't know any different. I walk out. We do the shoot. We do all this stuff. Sure, at the time, going, God, I'll take the money. Just do the best you can. And then we actually got invited to the screening. And when I walked out, I was, all right, never again am I going to judge a movie by a rough cut. Never again will I judge a movie by a rough cut. Ever. I was 24, 25. It's the last time I ever judged a movie by a rough cut. Anybody's movie, no matter how B, C, D, E, or A quality it is, do not judge a movie by its rough cut. Because this movie was so fun and so cute and just so likable. To this day, I'm still proud I got to work on it.
Thanks, Walter. Look, these are hollow points, but they're not Hydra shock.
One of the things about that film, and this, my opinion has never changed of this, although I think it's a little more relevant today, it's the definitive American movie. When you think about those people in that film, the cast, they're all this diverse group of people. Mr. Chang running that grocery store, he's going to make a buck off of these monsters. That's the American way, you know? And it has that look of To me, it has the look of Shane almost, the way it was shot. To me, it just has that really definitive American thing that you can feel good about. And everybody in that film, all the characters that are in there, they've all got something to contribute.
Very proud to have been associated with that film because it went smoothly. It was torturous because of all the dust and the dirt, and the heat was intense. It's a hot film to work on, but it was worth it. It's a wonderful memory.